Welcome to Get Serious. Today I wanted to dive into a follow-up on that Section AI article about the 3 AI strategy investments leaders should make in 2026. I'd already talked a bit about this in last week's episode, more about how to answer those 2 questions about how to even think about AI investments, meaning, how does your company actually create value? And we talked about with the land business, how all the value is created on the acquisition side. And then what are you not going to invest in anymore so you can fund the future? Where do you have to make cuts? Difficult question to answer, painful to answer when you've built up so much potential inertia or, status quo. This is just the way we do things. But in order to get to the next level, especially implementing AI to its greatest capacity, is where you have to make cuts and understand that the way you've been doing things is not going to get you to the next level here. So I wrote about kind of this full article, or at least touched on a lot of pieces of it within this week's Serious News. So if you want to see this in written format, you can go ahead and check it out. I'm going to go in a little bit more depth on the podcast side of it. So just FYI from that perspective, again, I think Section just does the best job out of any AI specific blogs, especially related to companies that I've read here. So highly encourage you to utilize it. So the next section of this article was just going over the actual strategy investments to make. So once you've answered those questions of, how are you creating value? What are you not going to invest into anymore? Then you can start actually creating your AI strategy investments. So you need to reallocate time from your leadership or your employees and potentially your strategic focus overall. So it's not just a money investment. Like a huge part of it's just a time and longer term potential for your company to account for. And again, the name of the game is subtracting, not adding. Like a lot of the times you have to just rip down, existing infrastructure down to the studs and then just start rebuilding from scratch with an understanding of what AI can actually add into your business instead of just, trying to band-aid solutions by throwing AI on top of it. So key thing to keep in mind here. And so within this longer term context is that you actually need to build an AI strategy for the next 5 years. So a lot for just a game-changing technology like this. Think about the potential of the internet when it came out in the early to mid 90s, how long it took for the true potential of that technology to reach its highest levels. And, there were some fits and starts, right? There was the .com bubble that happened that, took a whole bunch of entrants into the internet space, completely destroyed them. And then you got just the rise of the Amazons and the various social media companies. And honestly, today it led into the AI companies that we're seeing now. So there's just, multiple iterations across the technology that can take, potentially years to decades to fully realize. And so this stuff is just not going to happen overnight. I'm continually reminded of that as an entrepreneur, is to get really good at something. To even start to understand the full implications of the business or venture that you're working on, it probably takes about a half decade. That's what I've really realized that. And a lot of the higher level entrepreneurs like Hermosi mentioned that as well too. It's just harder to get up to speed when you need to build up so much underlying wisdom, even if you have great mentors and so forth. So think about the long term here. And there's different levels of what could be your AI strategy over those coming 5 years. How is it affecting your personal productivity, the output quality of anything that you are doing on a day-to-day basis? How do you get your team comfortable, or how do you get kind of team leaders if you're working in a business with multiple departments? So you have to start at that personal piece, things you're touching with every day. That's probably the easiest way to throw in AI. There's a whole bunch of great templates out there. Callan's Uncommon course helps get people started, and a much more advanced level as well too. So that's your lowest hanging fruit. Then you can look at the level 2, the workflow automations. What are key AI features that, can start taking over manual work? And, again, like we mentioned here, you have to rip some workflows down to their studs, like which workflows can be fully redesigned versus just partially automated. That's a much tougher question to answer. And then perhaps even tougher is, which of those workflows are even worth investing into? Do you have the underlying data on which particular workflows are driving more revenue and profit into the business? Do you know the answers to that? If not, how do you determine the answers to that? And which processes are you doing that aren't having any impact on your revenue or profit? Or, maybe they're too far out to say whether they're helping or not, but do you have, like, even if you're betting on a longer term potential play here, and honestly, like, content creation is one that's can be related to that. But do you have, even if you're making a longer term bet and you're telling your team, yeah, it's going to take a while for this to pay off, do you still have a route forward to understand if and when this particular strategy and tactic will ever have enough signal that you could actually pick up to see if it's working or not, or if it's like purely just a crapshoot and you don't even know what you're tracking? Sometimes I do wonder that with that for content creation. Not all of it, but sometimes, and some different versions of content, and how to adjust from there. I still believe, it's a longer term, and the necessity of a personal brand in any type of business nowadays, especially is when you get larger and need a hire much more qualified talent. Like, I think it's just absolutely critical. So, but again, like that can take potentially years to potentially pay off at the highest level there. But you need to have some type of a hypothesis, at least on where you can start measuring the data. And then the level 3 is just core process automation. So like, that's just building full custom software to automate a process with a ton of leverage within your business. That piece, is what we are attempting to do with Land Pricer here. It's like, can we actually just throw in target properties and see, can we automate the comp selection and the pricing calculation and so forth here? Really, really difficult to do, right? But we know like that is directly tied to revenue, right? Like the ability to price properties, especially at volume. That if we could automate that, it would be transformational. But again, much more time and resources involved in order to pull that off. But that's, the 5-year plan here. Can you actually write that out? The next piece here, something I think we're doing a lot better as our company too, but again, like the larger the company, probably the more difficult, is you gotta, power up your workforce from an AI perspective here. And like, you either need to reskill your workforce or replace your folks who can't like get on the the amount of folks who like just won't have a capability within, utilizing AI. Like, it's hard to kind of imagine, because, it's just getting, I think, easier to build up confidence every day. But if like somebody just can't grasp it, like they just can't work in, at least the types of industries that we're in that, just absolutely require or going to require AI competence. So the baseline section was mentioning is like, you should expect, to free up, 20% ish of your people's time to, let them experiment and apply AI to their real work and build solutions. Like, you got to give time for folks to get the reps in. But if they're already at capacity, like, they're just never going to get better here. So, if you're just working with half measures, or you're kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out with AI, it's like, your folks will notice that as well too, and will become like just knowledgeable enough to, be what's always my phrasing, and this was from a section here, of to be a AI driver, not a passenger. So again, if you like just get your folks knowledgeable enough where like they can start making some progress with AI, but like more than likely they're just going to utilize it as a crutch and potentially take your business down an even worse direction. So you've got to teach them how to be AI drivers, which is a difficult skill to, like, and it requires constant discipline. Like, everybody, myself, I need to remind myself to be an AI driver all the time, because AI can just make us all lazy. We see that in the data. And so if your folks have less bandwidth while they're being reskilled, you're probably going to lose a little bit of your output. Your revenue, your profit might take a hit. But, even if you have like flat growth, or, even just like break even a year to like really, really invest in AI, like, that's going to pay off to go, rocket ship mode, or at least stay steady in the growth trajectory as your competitors likely get better in this direction, or potentially like nascent industries who can start, competing for your business in ways you can't even perceive yet, just through clever use of AI. Like, you have to be aware of that. And then the last kind of key strategy here is like, you have to start rethinking of your tools and your systems of record here. So, and this is something I wrote about as well too, and how I've had to consider like any of our overhead, or even as we were building Land Pricer and so forth, like SaaS tools in and of themselves are going to be feeling the pain more and more and more over these coming weeks and months and years, as the out of the box LLMs continue to get so good, and the vibe coding capabilities can provide companies with truly custom apps at such a low fraction of both the monetary as well as the skill cost in order to develop them. And so, when you can create a truly customized solution with AI LLM backend that can really solve any, or, kind of orient around any type of question you might ask it, that just gives you so much more capability as a team, compared to if you are limited by whatever handful of capabilities that a SaaS product might be able to do here. So like that's again another tough question to answer, and what all these SaaS companies are going to have to answer. Like, are these the AI systems of the future, or are they dying beasts you're hitching your wagons to because they're suiting your current process here? Like, you can ask that about almost every SaaS tool at the moment right now. And same thing, like the section article points out too, is like, yeah, SaaS products that are labeled AI, it doesn't actually mean anything, because when you look under the hood for some of these products, and we were guilty of this with our first versions of Land Price, we were labeled as AI, but there's like almost no AI like actually on the back end for the MVP. Now it's like very, very AI, with like heavy utilization of the LLMs in order to just remove the user from comp selection and image analysis and so forth. But yeah, a lot of these AI powered SaaS products, like they don't actually have true AI powered features. They're just limiting you to only target a few possible problems that they can solve solutions for. Again, hyper personalization is going to be the name of the game here. Like, that's just a requirement for any software type system that you're utilizing or working within your team. So like, you have to reconsider. Some of these are like super expensive licenses on a monthly or yearly basis, cutting deep into your overhead and potential profits here. So really, really look keenly on what could be on its way out the door. So the final takeaways here, and again, I had mentioned some of these within the newsletter here, is, the top advice to win in 2026. You have to ask yourself, like, what can you do now with AI that you couldn't do before? And so like, there's two categories of AI opportunity. One that like pretty much everybody is at least trying to do is just incremental, like making existing workflows faster and cheaper. One that we're doing right now that like helps us is just creating podcast headlines. We can take the transcript of something that I'm saying right now. We have a whole Claude project built, well, like a prompt for headlines built within our Brand Guardian, which is a marketing Claude project that, Kellen's team oriented us around. That makes creating consistent copy and, podcasts, headlines and descriptions and Instagram reel copy all far easier compared to just writing it from scratch. So that makes us faster, it's cheaper, but it's incremental, right? It's not going to radically transform the business. So that next category is just the transformative workflows. What can AI enable that you literally could not do before? Way, way harder to think about that. And, an example I mentioned within Serious News is, can you imagine having triggers for every single possible subdivide project that comes onto the market in the US on any given day? And as soon as it hits, you have automatic underwriting that happens through a tool like Land Pricer or something. That would probably be eventually where we want to head in the direction for. So you could determine the subdivide potential out of any of these on-market listings hitting the market, and then after your pricing is calculated, you are automatically sending out offers to whoever the agent is, for that particular property. Like that is not something you could do prior to AI. Like no matter what type of team you had, um, uh, to the highest, I guess you could have had a team of like 100+ analysts. Like it's ridiculous to kind of consider, because it would just not be cost effective to do that. You'd have so much slack in the system, and like I haven't heard of anybody doing that. Even the biggest companies out there, like, and honestly, even then, your analysts you're still going to have to sleep. You can't. I mean, to have them available 20 to work on something like that is just like unrealistic. Like that was just not something that would be possible to do, and have them all as accurate, consistently accurate across their underwriting processes, to where there's really no mistake between analyst to analyst. Like a human team just could not do that. So like those are the types of opportunities you have to think about that could be truly transformative for your business. Very ambitious to do, but this is the new marketplace that we are heading into. And that's just, one example. I could think of a number of them within the landers real estate space writ large that could become possible here. So again, what outcome do you want as a business? Again, how do you create value as a company on the acquisition side? And what process would you design if we just started from scratch? So like go back, rip things down to the studs, and figure out what you need to do to design the workflows of the future. Like that's what we're going to be working on really as a top priority over this coming year here. Again, it might keep growth lower than it was before, but I know it's going to set us up for years and decades to come. And that's the message I've been repeating internally here and how externally. Last couple things here. I know we're running a little bit long. Don't be a quarterly CEO. This goes along with, you got to have a 5-year plan. You got to convince your team or whoever, your partners, et cetera. Like, we might be taking a hit this year. Growth might flatten out, and we're going to do it anyway, because this is the only route forward. If you need a bet to pay it, like if you need your quarterly growth to be, just, solid each and every quarter, but like that's the only thing you're focused on. Like it's harder to be, building transformative infrastructure at the same time. So you got to be that 5-year CEO, founder, whatever in your company to bet on the long game. Last point too, again, just think hard about building versus buying. Like I mentioned, these vibe coding opportunities, even if you have to hire out for that, it's going to be far cheaper to do that. Like building custom software, custom internal tools and so forth always tended to be far more expensive, or like only larger enterprises could do that, versus just like buying a license for a particular SaaS tool. Now that is just starting to shift to where all of a sudden building something that could be far more capable than any SaaS product on the market could actually be cheaper and easier to implement than buying a software that might inherently limit you with the actual capabilities that you need for your specific business. So, think about all those licenses you're paying for, the cost of customization consultants for various SaaS products out there, for very complicated products. And again, the trade-offs of inefficient workflows and operational workarounds, like where, if these SaaS products don't fit your workflows precisely, and then you're just building in more inefficiencies, or your team has to jump between tool to tool, versus something that fits more particularly just for your core business. So then you have to like look at the math between that effectiveness gap versus the tool cost, and make that long-term play. So really, really interesting stuff. Hope you guys take a lot out of this. I know this is our, again, number one focus that we're betting our future on. So, we'll see if we can pull it off. Seriousland.capital for any of your land funding needs, and subscribe and share, everybody. Hope you enjoy the holidays if you're listening around then. Merry Christmas, and subscribe and share. Take care now. Bye.